if we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
Oh, Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, the
Memorial Day speech. Yep.
I discovered that
What he said to play that.
You're an idiot.
Oh, hey everybody! Welcome to our Memorial Day podcast.
Absolutely, taking a slight detour to pay homage to the fallen, which is especially pertinent to all of us as veterans. So it's sort of a special, for me, it's always been an obligation to go to a cemetery, pay the respects. I live in the vicinity of a very impressive military cemetery, so I've taken my children there in the past few years. We're going to be doing so again, and so here tonight we're going to remember some of the greats of times past.
I did an honor guard detail years ago at the Dallas Fort Worth National Cemetery. I did it for a month. It was humbling.
Man, yeah, I bet.
I never had that honor. Guess I wasn't cut and polished enough.
I mean, I did a few burial at sea details, and those are pretty nothing like the great cemeteries, but in and of itself, it's a pretty unique ceremony to be a part of. So I would definitely do it again if I had the chance.
They do burials at sea.
Yeah.
Even in just normal operations. I mean, I can see it in combat operations. You can't go home to bring, your fallen comrades home to be
I'm trying
buried. But
to I'm trying to remember because we actually 2 out of the 3 cruises someone died. Someone drowned in a Liberty port. So nothing glorious, obviously, but still tragic for those folks. You know, so I think he was flown home though. The burials at sea, I think we were probably in transit to the Persian Gulf. So we might have been in the Indian Ocean when we did the burials at sea.
okay.
Sometimes when we do like month-long workups, we'll do a burial at sea. So yeah, it's always a pretty cool ceremony.
Well, I mean, anytime we lost somebody, we did our own little ceremony, but it wasn't like our own little memorial to them.
Right.
But it wasn't the actual funeral. It was just like our own little thing because when we were overseas, we couldn't obviously we couldn't be there for the actual funeral, so we did our own little memorial for them, each one.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Yeah. So how about a little history of Memorial Day? It was started shortly after the Civil War, right?
Yeah, so I know there's always a little bit of a mixed story. The one you commonly hear, I think it was like 1866 or 67, somewhere in that immediate post-war time frame. They talk about liberated slaves honoring the graves of slain Union soldiers, federal soldiers. But at the same time, there's also, there was this memorial activities throughout North and South. So like ladies of the South were commemorating their fallen, husbands and
Yeah,
sons.
I thought it was actually started in the South, like they were remembering their fallen down there, and then we kind of
Like I say, there's a
pulled it in.
little bit of a competing, because everybody wants to be the first, like the home of and the original. So more than likely it was the vanquished Confederates who started the tradition, but almost simultaneously some slaves, and I think it was like South Cackalack, South Carolina, where they were honoring, I don't know if it was like Fort Wagner area or areas around there, but they were paying homage to them. So it was, regardless, it was in sort of that immediate post-war era in the 1860s.
Yeah. What do we want to get into first? A couple little war stories or what?
Yeah, I mean, I know we were discussing some of the greats of time past, like the great gunny Sergeant Basilone. So I think he's a great launching pad here.
Yeah, I'd say so. What the heck? I don't want it to do that.
Yeah, John Basilone's he's a very good one to kick off the highest traditions of
like Ronnie
American military.
Like Ronnie was saying before we started, this man had brass balls that he needed a cart to wheel them around in because this guy.
I'm saying, yeah, for sure. When he got off the landing craft onto an island, that island listed to that side pretty heavily when he got off because of the weight of his balls.
He actually caused a miniature tsunami when he stepped in the water.
Hey, cradle those a little bit. You'll swamp the boat. All right, so John Basilone, American Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, was the only Marine to receive both the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross during World War II. At the Battle of Guadalcanal, Sergeant Basilone successfully defended a narrow pass with his gun team. Afterward, he was offered a safer base training position, but Basilone turned it down in favor of going back into action at Iwo Jima. He gave his life on the battlefield of Iwo Jima.
Yeah, and that's, I know we pulled up another article. That's just, this site that we're on, it just provided a brief snippet. If people had ever seen the HBO's The Pacific, they sort of make him a key feature of that miniseries of his exploits and his, of course, his eventual death.
Yeah, this man is hardcore. All right. So, yeah, we'll skip that part because we all heard of this man before. So, obviously, like I said before, he's the only Marine in World War II to receive the two highest U.S. military medals, the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. John Basilone is an excellent example of a U.S. Marine and a fighter, well deserving of the medals he received. Born on November 4th, 1916 in Raritan, New Jersey, Basilone was the sixth of 10 children in an Italian family and would grow up as a tough young man. Just before his 18th birthday, Basilone enlisted in the U.S. Army and served in the Philippines as an infantryman from 1934 to 37. He would become known as Manila John due to his army service in the Philippines. During his time in the Philippines, Basilone became a champion boxer and absolutely adored life in the Philippines. Thus, when he returned to the States in 1937 and started working as a truck driver, it was not the life Basilone longed to lead. So he enlisted in the Marine Corps on June 3rd, 1940 in hopes of returning to his beloved Philippines. Basilone was deployed to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, before he took part in the invasion of Guadalcanal in the Pacific, where he would achieve his renown. From August 1942 on, Basilone and his unit, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines of the 1st Marine Division, were tasked with fighting the Japanese deep in the jungles of Guadalcanal, one of the hundreds of islands that comprise of the Solomons. So, late in the fall, on the night of October 24th, 1942, Basilone, who was then a sergeant, was responsible for commanding two heavy 30 caliber machine gun sections from 1-7 that had the task of holding a narrow pass at Tenaru River. A Japanese regiment that numbered 3,000 men began to attack the small crews of Marines as they dug in for the night with grenades and mortar fire. The Marines successfully held off the attack until one gun crew was disabled by enemy fire. As Basilone's Medal of Honor citation notes, Basilone carried roughly 90 pounds of weaponry and ammunition to the disabled gun pit, running a distance of 200 yards through enemy fire with total disregard for his own life. As he ran, Basilone killed several Japanese soldiers with his Colt 45 pistol.
And what the article doesn't mention was he was carrying all that gear with just his pinky.
Mm-hmm. So this is the actual citation on his Medal of Honor award. It says, for extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry in action against enemy Japanese forces above and beyond the call of duty, while serving with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines in the Lunga area, Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands on 24 and 25 October 1942. While the enemy was hammering at the Marines' defensive positions, Sergeant Basilone, in charge of two sections of heavy machine guns, fought valiantly to check the savage and determined assault. In a fierce frontal attack with the Japanese blasting his guns with grenades and mortar fire, one of Sergeant Basilone's sections with its gun crews was put out of action, leaving only 2 men able to carry on. Moving an extra gun into position, he placed it in action, then under continual fire repaired another, and personally manned it, gallantly holding his line until replacements arrived. A little later, with ammunition critically low and the supply lines cut off, Basilone, at great risk to his own life and in the face of continued enemy attack, battled his way through hostile lines with urgently needed shells for his gunners, thereby contributing in large measure to the virtual annihilation of a Japanese regiment. His great personal valor and courageous initiative were in keeping with the highest traditions of the U.S. Naval Forces.
Good Lord. Dude wiped out a regiment on his own volition.
I'm wondering if later on in his life he needed back surgery
His balls grew 3 sizes that day.
because
Like the Grinch's heart.
the weight
Right, exactly.
the weight of those balls must have been putting some strain on his back.
Well, if he had, well, did the article cover that he was laid low? That he was did it already discuss his death at Ewo?
No,
Further down it does.
yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was about to say, if he had survived the war, I don't know what percentage the VA would have given him for all that back pain caused by, enormous ball drop.
Here's the citation for his Navy Cross, and in this citation, it tells how he died. So, for extraordinary heroism while serving as a leader of a machine gun section of Company C, 1st Battalion, 27th Marines, 5th Marine Division, in action against enemy Japanese forces on Iwo Jima in the Volcano Islands, 19 February 1945. Shrewdly gauging the tactical situation shortly after landing, when his company's advance was held up by the concentrated fire of heavily fortified Japanese blockhouse, Gunnery Sergeant Basilone boldly defied the smashing bombardment of heavy caliber fire to work his way around the flank and up to a position directly on top of the blockhouse, and then, attacking with grenades and demolitions, single-handedly destroyed the entire hostile strongpoint and its defending garrison. Consistently daring and aggressive as he fought his way over the battle-torn beach and up the sloping, gun-studded terraces toward Airfield Number 1, he repeatedly exposed himself to the blasting fury of exploding shells, and later in the day, coolly proceeded to the aid of a friendly tank, which had been trapped in an enemy minefield under intense mortar and artillery barrages, skillfully guiding the heavy vehicle over hazardous terrain to safety, despite the overwhelming volume of hostile fire. In the forefront of the assault, at all times he pushed forward with dauntless courage and iron determination until, moving upon the edge of the airfield, he fell instantly by a bursting mortar shell. Stout-hearted and indomitable, Gunnery Sergeant Basilone, by his intrepid initiative, outstanding professional skill, and valiant spirit of self-sacrifice in the face of fanatic opposition, contributed materially to the advance of his company during the early critical period of the assault, and his unwavering devotion to his comrades, and reflects the highest credit upon Gunnery Sergeant Basilone and the United States Naval Service.
You know, that story of him on Iwo Jima is just as, if not more impressive than Guadalcanal. I say that should have been a second Medal of Honor, in my opinion. But
I mean,
well, the Navy Cross, I mean, arguably is just as good. So
yeah, it's true. That's true. It's just a name game at this point. I mean, but I mean, you see these awards upgraded all the time. I mean, every year there's always some story in like Military Times or something where it's like, long dead soldier has award upgraded. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's another upgrade in the future. Because
wow.
John Basilone, I mean, when I think about him, because I mean, when I first became aware of him watching HBO's Pacific, which is basically the Pacific War version of Band of Brothers. And it came out like 9 years after Band of Brothers.
So we're not done yet, though. We got one more little paragraph right here, though. This one should be interesting. Look, for a total of 3 days, Basilone ran back and forth between gun pits, supplying ammunition and assisting the junior Marines. He even lost his asbestos gloves, which were gloves used to hold or switch hot barrels of the heavily used machine guns. Undeterred, Basilone used his bare hands to remove the barrel of his machine gun and take out an entire wave of Japanese soldiers during the height of the battle, even though he burned his hands and arms in the process. By the time reinforcements arrived for the Marines, Basilone and his gun crews had thwarted the entire Japanese regiment, but at great cost. Only Basilone and 2 other Marines were left standing. Basilone himself killed at least 38 enemy soldiers using the machine guns, his pistol, and even a machete.
You know,
What I was getting at, I didn't mean to jump ahead of myself, but when I think about John Basilone, I kind of think of Achilles from the Iliad, and because Achilles was basically, you know, if anyone's read that story, and frankly, if you're a Westerner, you should. It's a key piece of Western literature. But Achilles was basically given an option. It's like, you know what, you can avoid this war, this Trojan War, essentially. You'll have a wife and many children. You'll be remembered for a few generations, but gradually your name will fade into obscurity. Or you can go on the ships to this great war, and you will die, but you'll be remembered for eternity. And of course, you know, people know the Iliad. Know that
it
he did.
it reminds me of a good quote from the movie Troy, when the kid's like, he's the biggest man I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to fight him. He says that's why no one will remember your name.
Exactly. That's what in the literature. That's what Achilles decided to do, and of course, he is still talked about, you know, several thousand years later, about when, if he was a real man, then we're still talking about him. So to me, John Basilone is like almost like an American Achilles.
So
'Cause
Achilles was the OG giant brass balls.
So that's always been my thoughts about him. He's one of the greatest warriors who's ever lived in American history. He deserves to be remembered for eternity. And in Ruritan, New Jersey, his hometown, they still commemorate him. He has his own day. They still remember him, which I think is great.
Well, what was he? He's a gunnery sergeant, right? Gunnery Sergeant Basilone, you will always be remembered.
I was just a little side note for the awards. I think for the awards for outstanding valor in combat and such, they should you get one and it's the award, but you know how on the ribbons, if you get a second one of the same reward, it's either stars or oak leaf clusters, that sort of thing.
In lieu of second award. Yeah.
For those big awards like the Medal of Honor or the Navy Cross or the things like that, if you get a second one, instead of star clusters or oak leaf clusters, it should be a set of 2 brass balls, and they go around the end.
Yeah, just a hairy
Well,
scrotum.
the VA probably would have generously awarded him 10% for the back injury caused by the brass balls weighing him down.
Yeah. Or instead, like we'll make a new highest medal, and on the medal it will just be a print of a guy wheeling around his balls in the fucking wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of the combat infantry badge, it's that.
Yeah. So, all right, where are we at now? All right, John Basilone.
Memory eternal to the great Gunny.
All right, well, this is a British Army officer, so it doesn't really apply. Women's Air Force service pilot.
As a quick side note, because I think everybody's familiar with the it's kind of almost touching, really. I think everybody's heard the Flanders Field poem at this point in their life, especially if one's a veteran, because it's usually cited at Memorial Day ceremonies. There's videos on it, and that was actually written by a Canadian colonel. I think he was a doctor who himself did not survive World War I. I think he died in 1918. So I always kind of found that sort of eerie in the sense that the guy who wrote basically the poem for Memorial Day for remembrance himself did not make it out. So Colonel John McCrae.
Actually, we have Brits that listen to this, I think. So
Yeah, that
we
would
can
make sense.
recognize some Brits on here.
Because of course, November 11th is like their Memorial Day. So
Yeah. So, Adrian Carton de Wyart. I don't know. I don't know how to say that.
the guy with the eye patch.
Over 4 wars spanning 6 decades, Adrian Carton de Wyart proved himself to be one of the most dedicated and unkillable soldiers of all time. The Belgian-born British Army officer sustained 11 grievous injuries, including being shot in the face, head, hand, stomach, leg, groin, and ankle. He also survived numerous plane crashes and a broken back. Despite all of these injuries, he remained fully dedicated to military service. We salute you, sir.
Yeah, there's a
Insanity.
great picture of him. There's a great picture of this guy like wearing an eye patch while he has his what is it, like combination cover or something.
Oh yeah, I seen that picture.
That's
What are
like
you, a glutton for punishment?
Wait, was that the picture where his like half his face is caved in because like he got messed up so bad or whatever?
it kind of looks like it. Yeah, I don't know if this is probably post World War II, but
Yeah. It was after he was done, pretty much. He's like missing half his leg, his face is half gone, he's got a missing eye. I think his hand was like missing like 3 fingers, and yeah, he was yeah.
his name was Lucky.
They gotta put him out to pasture at some point. I mean,
Well, that's funny you say that because my grandfather, my French grandfather, he was in, I guess, probably 2 or 3 wars himself. World War II, Suez Canal crisis. Well, apparently he was in France's version of Vietnam. He was at Dien Bien Phu, I was told.
oh really?
And then Algeria during the Algerian revolt, because of course that was a colony of France. But he actually in 1990 submitted a letter to either Colin Powell or Norman Schwarzkopf, offering his services because he had served in that part of the world in the previous decades. And there's actually a letter where they responded, thanked him for his service, but declined his offer.
And they're like, "Thank you, sir, but I think we got this."
And you're old as shit.
Anyway, you don't know how to use the weapons we have today.
Yeah, this isn't bayonet charges anymore.
He's in
All
the
right.
charge of the light brigade.
So Jacqueline Cochran, pilot Jacqueline Cochran headed up the Women's Air Force Service pilots and tirelessly trained pilots for the program during World War II. After earning the U.S. Distinguished Service Medal in 1945, she joined the U.S. Air Force Reserve as a lieutenant colonel. She also received her Air Force Command pilot wings and 3 Distinguished Flying Cross medals.
Yeah, before they lowered standards, she earned it. So God bless you, ma'am.
Nice.
Yep.
Eternal too.
Do they
She definitely deserved it.
they don't lower standards for female fighter pilots, do they?
Well, I would have to think the physical standards probably like everyone else, but
Yeah, but you got to be able to perform in an aircraft like everybody else.
well, that's true. So
Yeah.
that's
When
where it
you're
differs.
pulling high G maneuvers, you know, that takes a lot of muscle power to keep the blood pumping while you're pulling those high Gs. If you can't do it, you can't do it.
Well, don't they have don't the flight suits have aren't the legs like pressurized to force
I
blood back
believe-
up into your
yes.
upper part of your body? when you're
Yes, I
pulling
believe
high
they
Gs?
are. I believe they are, but I think you still have to put some effort into it. It doesn't just do it automatically, or it doesn't do all the work for you.
Now, some of the ladies that I found really fascinating from especially the Second World War, didn't the Soviets call them the night witches, where they actually flew bombing raids?
They probably did. But
Yeah, the Soviet pilots were absolute bad because, of course, they had no choice. They had to throw everyone.
well, the Soviets also had the Sparrow program.
Right. But yeah, I think they were called the night witches. So badass ladies right there.
Well, the Sparrow program where KGB was run by the KGB, they were basically prostitute spies. They
So
literally
some-
trained prostitutes to be spies for the KGB.
So kind of like what Black Widow in the Marvel movies started out as.
Yeah, something like that. All right, Desmond Doss. All right. You know what? I should have got more of a story on this guy because
yeah, he's almost deserving of his own. Him and John Bastelone are deserving of like one podcast each, honestly.
All right, so
So just apparently, according to this article title, Hacksaw Ridge didn't even show all the heroics that he actually did, which is wild.
So it just took a few little snippets and ran with it.
yeah, so Desmond Doss was a fearless World War II medic who refused to carry a gun, dubbed a conscientious objector. He nevertheless single-handedly saved the lives of between 50 and 100 American soldiers on the Maida Escarpment of Okinawa in 1945. Doss also treated his own injuries to save stretchers for others and earned the Medal of Honor, making him the first conscientious objector to do so.
Yeah, actually, there's a great picture of Harry Truman placing the medal on him. I think that's a.
So the story of Desmond Doss that was way too heroic even for Hacksaw Ridge, which was the name of a movie, right?
Yeah, so I think that was Mel Gibson, actually, if I'm not, no, was it Mel Gibson or was it
I don't know. I've never seen it. I don't know.
You haven't
Hey,
seen it? Holy fuck.
You know, in the movie, if they actually told the truth and put everything that he did in there, it wouldn't have been believable, and no one would have believed it actually happened.
Yeah. So, though he refused to fire a gun, Desmond Doss became one of the most legendary soldiers of World War II and saved 75 men during the Battle of Okinawa. If you called him a hero, Desmond Doss would have likely corrected you. The young World War II medic who single-handedly saved the lives of 75 American soldiers on the Maida Escarpment of Okinawa in 1945 would say that he only did what was right, and he would also say that he never carried a weapon because he was in the business of saving lives, not taking them. In 2016, the Academy Award-winning film Hacksaw Ridge brought Desmond Doss to the attention of countless people who'd never heard of this exceptionally brave man. But the movie didn't tell the full story. The early life of Desmond Doss. Desmond Doss is famously portrayed in the movie Hacksaw Ridge, but his true story is even more incredible. From a young age, Desmond Doss, born on February 7th, 1919, radiated the kind of empathy that he'd display as a soldier later in life. When he was just a child, for example, he once walked 6 miles to donate blood to an accident victim, a complete stranger, after hearing about the need for blood on a local radio station. A few days later, Doss traveled down the same long stretch of road to give even more blood. Around the same time, Doss also developed a hatred of weapons that would persist throughout his entire life, even during his time in combat. Doss' hatred of weapons stemmed from his religious beliefs as a Seventh-day Adventist and from watching his drunken father pull a gun on his uncle during an argument. His mother had managed to confiscate the .45 pistol from her husband and told the young Doss to run and hide it. He was so shaken he vowed that was the last time he would ever hold a weapon. Instead, Doss spent his childhood doing things like flattening pennies on the railway near Lynchburg, Virginia, home and wrestling with his younger brother, Harold. He said that Desmond wasn't much fun to wrestle with because you could never win. Not because Desmond was particularly skilled, but because he'd never surrender and wouldn't know how to give up. Years later, the physical resilience would come in handy during his time in the military, and it would also help him earn the Medal of Honor, conscientious objector in the U.S. military. At age 18, Doss dutifully registered for the draft and worked at a shipyard in Newport News, Virginia. When World War II broke out, Doss jumped at the opportunity to aid the cause and serve his country during the conflict. but the fact that he refused to carry a weapon, let alone kill anyone, earned him the widely unflattering label of conscientious objector. It was a label that Doss hated, and instead of flat out refusing to perform military service, he insisted that he work as a medic. The Army assigned him to a rifle company instead, in hopes that he'd just leave the military. He just didn't fit into the Army's model of what a good soldier would be, said Terry Benedict, a filmmaker who made The Conscientious Objector, a documentary about Doss in 2004. Doss appealed the Army's decision up through the ranks until they begrudgingly decided to make him a medic. But his fellow soldiers in training camp still couldn't understand why Doss was there in the first place. They teased him mercilessly to man up and carry a rifle. Some of them also launched their boots and other objects at him while he was praying by his bunk at night. And one even threatened him, "Doss, when we get into combat, I'll make sure you don't come back alive." Many of the soldiers hated him for getting a pass on the Sabbath because it was against his religion to work on his holy day. Never mind that the officers gave Doss all the worst work to complete by himself on Sundays. Nobody wanted to be friends. Friends had each other's backs. Without a defense weapon, the others insisted Doss was useless to them. Doss not only dismissed their cruel behavior, but he also rose above it. He believed that his purpose was to serve both God and his country. All he wanted was to prove those two tasks weren't mutually exclusive. So then came the battle at Okinawa. Made a escarpment, or what the Americans called Hacksaw Ridge. It fell on May 5th, 1945, a Saturday, which was Doss's day of Sabbath. It was a particularly grueling onslaught, with artillery coming so fast and furious that it was literally ripping men in half. The Japanese Army's plan of waiting until all of the Americans reached the plateau to open fire created a devastating amount of wounded soldiers. But the Japanese didn't know that the Americans had Desmond Doss. In an act that still astounds the surviving members of Doss's company today, the fearless medic held his ground at the plateau. Amidst never-ending gunfire and mortar shells, Doss treated the wounded American soldiers that others may have left for dead. And even when his own life was at risk, he was determined to save as many men as he possibly could. Hour after hour, as explosions rang constantly in his ears, he tied countless tourniquets covered from head to toe in blood, not his own. Doss crawled and dragged each injured member of his company to the edge of the ridge and carefully lowered them down. For more than 12 hours, he labored under fire and saved an incredible amount of human lives. Knowing that some Japanese soldiers sometimes tortured wounded U.S. soldiers, Doss refused to leave a single man on top of the ridge. Not only did Doss leave no man behind, but he also miraculously escaped with his own life and avoided any serious injury. Doss would later claim that God had spared his life on that faithful day. And according to The Conscientious Objector, Japanese soldiers repeatedly had Doss in their sights, only to have their guns jam at the last moment. 2 weeks later, Doss was in battle again, a few miles away from the escarpment, when a Japanese grenade landed in a foxhole containing Doss and some of his patients. He attempted to kick the grenade away, but it detonated. Doss ended up with deep shrapnel lacerations all down his legs. He treated himself for shock and dressed his own wounds, rather than having another medic emerge from safety to help. 5 hours later, someone finally arrived with a stretcher, but when Doss saw a soldier in need, he rolled off, surrendered his stretcher, and started patching up his comrade. While Doss was waiting for more help to arrive, a sniper suddenly shot and shattered all of the bones in his left arm. Hacksaw director Mel Gibson left this part out of the film because he felt that it was so heroic that audiences wouldn't even believe that it had really happened. So Doss then crawled 300 yards to the aid station without accompaniment. He didn't realize it then, but he'd lost his Bible on the battlefield. The heroic legacy of Desmond Doss. Yeah, so I mean, The man went through hell.
Yeah. It's amazing that he even wanted to enlist and go into combat unarmed.
I know, right?
It's
I mean, because again, a traditional understanding of conscientious objector is like not even like, for example, probably working in a factory that provides ammunition to the cause, for example.
Well, the first
like,
time I ever even heard that term, it was referring to, like the liberal hippie type from Vietnam.
right. No,
Got
that's
drafted and didn't want to fight,
that's where it became very commonplace. Yeah. But I mean, no, because they even showed in the movie. I thought they portrayed, from what I know about Desmond Doss, reading and watching documentaries about him, like Andrew Garfield, who recently did Tick Tick Boom, but I think this is his best role ever. Like you could see it, like he captured that sort of irritation very well, where it's like, no, I want to serve, I want to serve my country. After Pearl Harbor, I was angry like everyone else.
yeah.
So
Vietnam was a different story where the conscientious objectors were draftees that were forced to go. They didn't even want to serve the country, and so they just claimed conscientious objector to try to get out of it.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, completely different situation. It's crazy to think, like, if you even just think of like those 75 guys, I mean, I don't know if they'll survive to the end. I mean, it was May 1945, so if they survived, they probably didn't see any more combat. So at that point, you have to think, man, there's like tens of thousands of people who are alive today because he got their grandpa off a ridge when they were supposed to die. I mean, they would have died up there.
Yep.
To me, that's just amazing.
Right. And for 12 hours, single-handedly dragging these men and lowering them down a cliff. Like,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you look at all the of those 75 guys, like how many kids they each would have had, and then moving on down the line to present day is probably 1,000 people alive today because of this
I mean,
man.
that's I mean, it's just mind blowing to think that. And I don't know if anyone ever approached him in later life, like, "Hey, you saved my pa," but still amazing. But it's crazy because he maintained his opposition to utilizing firearms probably for his whole life. But you go back to the previous war, World War I, where you had Sergeant York, Alvin York, who actually started out as a conscientious objector. But
Trying to take on the
apparently,
Germans his damn self.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, because eventually he won the Medal of Honor too for his actions, and I forget if it was the Argonne or I forget which woods it was, but he was actually convinced to drop his conscientious objection after speaking with, I think it was either a pastor or a Christian who happened to also be a colonel. But Doss maintained his his position, and it's funny because he got a Medal of Honor, and so did Alvin York, who earned his Medal of Honor by killing men. So I always found that interesting.
you oughta see if you can Google and pull up Alvin York's Medal of Honor citation.
Yeah,
and see what's written there.
I can try, but
well, maybe they have him on this site. I don't know, but
no, he's not on this one.
That's bizarre because he was like a superstar back in the early to mid 1900s after his exploits. Like he was basically an early celebrity. Because Gary Cooper, the great Gary Cooper, they made a movie about. They called the movie, I think, Sergeant York, showing his exploits on the Western Front. But it's just kind of a tale of two cities, so to speak, where it's like, okay, he dropped his conscientious status and won the Medal of Honor. Desmond Doss maintained his, and yet he also got the Medal of Honor. Kind of a funny situation. And from the same neck of the woods too. Alvin York was from Tennessee, and Desmond Doss was from Appalachian, Virginia, Blue Ridge, Virginia. So they were kind of two peas in a pod almost.
Yep. Appalachian.
Yeah, produced some
Alvin Colliam York, date of birth December 13th, 1887. Fentress County, Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Sergeant York began military service reluctantly as a conscientious objector. He, along with Charles Whittlesey and Samuel Woodfill, was one of 3 World War I Medal of Honor recipients chosen by General John J. Pershing to act as a pallbearer for the unknown soldier of World War I. His heroic actions were later made into a movie with Gary Cooper starring as Alvin York. Medal of Honors, awarded citation. President of the United States of America, in the name of Congress, takes pleasure in presenting the Medal of Honor to Corporal Alvin York. United States Army for extraordinary heroism on 8 October 1918 while serving with Company G, 2nd Battalion, 328th Infantry, 82nd Division in action at, what is that, Château-Chehery, France?
Chateau.
Chateau Cherry.
Château-Chehery? Château-Chehery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, France. After his platoon had suffered heavy casualties and 3 other non-commissioned officers had become casualties, Corporal York assumed command. Fearlessly leading 7 men, he charged with great daring a machine gun nest which was pouring deadly and incessant fire upon his platoon. In this heroic feat, the machine gun nest was taken, together with 4 officers and 128 men and several guns. A second.
Yeah. The other little excerpt, Andy, said that he was credited with killing 25 Germans on top of taking that 128 prisoner.
Where was that at?
Whatever there was another thing that I saw
Okay.
there.
It kills over 20 German soldiers and captures an additional 132 at the head of a small detachment in the Argonne Forest.
Let me tell you what, man, the Argonne probably produced most of the medals of honor from World War One.
Who the hell are you, Ronnie? Sergeant York trying to take on the Germans his damn self?
Yeah, 'cause I think there's a famous quote about him where I don't know if it was some general or maybe even the president who asked him if he had. It looked like he had taken the whole German army. He's like, no, sir, only like 132 of them or something.
Who's that Marine in World War One? Crap. He was commanding a unit, and they had just arrived on station, wherever the action was at, and they were given the order to retreat. And he famously said, "Retreat, hell! We just got here."
That was in Korea. I believe that
I
was
thought it
in
was in
Korea.
World War One. No, it was in World War One.
No, it was Korea, dude.
World War One. Look it up.
But
Look it up. Just Google "retreat, hell." We just got here.
An interesting little side note from that brief snippet you provided about Sergeant York when they were talking about the pallbearers. Major Charles Whittlesey had led the famous Lost Battalion in the I think it was in the Argonne when him and 500 of his men were probably surrounded by thousands of Germans. They fought for like 3 or 4 days, keeping basically an American position, a forward American position against the German attack. Probably killed 100. I mean, he lost a substantial percentage of his men as well. But yeah, they made a fantastic made-for-TV movie on that called The Lost Battalion, which everybody should see because these men were some bad dudes.
Well, you're not wrong, Ronnie. I think it originates World War One, but I think someone said it in Korea too, because there's a Korean War movie called Retreat Hell. So
yeah, look, I mean,
you're not wrong, but
when you think about boot camp or you think about going up through the services, we always learn about like the great ones and what they said. So they probably heard his quote, whoever said that, and carried it with them years later.
Well, in the words of Joe Biden, they're dog-faced pony soldiers.
By the thing.
Super international depression.
Yeah, I'm gonna institute true and international with the pressure.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
All
What
right.
a joke. It's a clown.
A yoke.
Audie Murphy. A short baby-faced boy from Texas, Audie Murphy's skill as a soldier made him one of the most decorated heroes of World War II. One of the most decorated heroes ever
Yeah.
to this
It's not
day.
as World War II.
He earned the Medal of Honor by stalling a German attack. Wounded and alone with a gun, Murphy mounted an abandoned burning tank destroyer and held the Germans off long enough for the Allies to launch a counterattack. After returning home a hero, he launched an acting career and played himself in the film To Hell and Back. So we got a little more of this right here.
It looks like the Germans should have just tried to defeat him with a large magnet.
So World War II. U.S. Army, Audie Leon Murphy, details rank, second lieutenant, World War II. But he started in World War II as a private, didn't he? And then he moved up, and then he got a field commission.
Yeah, I
Right.
believe he got a battlefield commission,
Yeah,
but I'm not sure.
if I remember right. Wait a minute, what am I reading here? Was this what I found? I thought I
I
was.
don't think so. That doesn't look like the thing you had up before.
Action date January 26, 1945. Medal of Honor, action place near Holtzworth, France. Citation: Second Lieutenant Murphy commanded Company B, which was attacked by 6 tanks and waves of infantry. Second Lieutenant Murphy ordered his men to withdraw. Yeah, this is what I read. So he ordered his men to withdraw to prepared positions in a wood line, while he remained forward at his command post and continued to give fire directions to the artillery by telephone. Behind him, to his right, one of our tank destroyers received a direct hit and began to burn. Its crew withdrew to the woods. Second Lieutenant Murphy continued to direct artillery fire, which killed large numbers of the advancing enemy infantry. With the enemy tanks abreast of his position, Second Lieutenant Murphy climbed on to the burning tank destroyer, which was in danger of blowing up at any moment, and employed its 50 caliber machine gun against the enemy. He was alone and exposed to German fire from 3 sides, but his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. The enemy tanks, losing infantry support, began to fall back. For an hour, the Germans tried every available weapon to eliminate Second Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position and wiped out a squad which was trying to creep up unnoticed on his right flank. So Germans reached as close as 10 yards, only to be mowed down by his fire. He received a leg wound, but ignored it and continued to single-handedly fight until his ammunition was exhausted. He then made his way to his company, refused medical attention, and organized the company in a counterattack which forced the Germans to withdraw. His directing of artillery fire wiped out many of the enemy. He killed or wounded about 50. Second Lieutenant Murphy's indomitable courage and his refusal to give an inch of ground saved his company from possible encirclement and destruction, and enabled it to hold the woods, which had been the enemy's objective.
Fucking wild.
He held off a
Again.
German assault that size all by himself.
Yeah, 6 tanks and probably 100, 200 infantry.
Right?
I mean,
And this isn't the only story of his like this. Like, he's got so many stories. I've heard a few, but I mean,
Yeah, it sucks because he got cut short because he died in a plane crash in 1971 in Virginia. It's just crazy to think how much more he could have shared with people about his exploits if that hadn't happened. Kind of a
imagine to live through all that craziness and then come home and die in a plane crash.
man, the guy, like, once you live through all of that, like, you're going to seek out adventure and excitement once the war is over. So I think flying was that outlet for him.
Yeah,
Deborah
crazy.
Sampson. Deborah Sampson disguised herself as a man for 2 years to fight in the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. Shot in battle, she dug the bullet out of her own leg rather than be exposed. After an exam years later, while gravely ill, she was found out and honorably discharged. She was one of the first female lecturers, and her husband was the first man to receive a widow's pension.
That's wild.
She served in the Revolution?
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, yeah, look at the style of the art there. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't uncommon. I mean, there weren't like, sometimes historical revisionists try to go crazy with this shit, and like it was probably a couple hundred women throughout
Yeah,
the
but
century.
imagine the huevos on her to
Yeah.
perform surgery on her own leg and dig a bullet out all by herself to
I
avoid
think,
being found out.
yeah, the attending physician would have noticed the lack of a certain Private Johnson. So,
Yep.
Yep.
Johnson.
because that happened to some female some females in the Civil War who were receiving surgery. Oh, you don't have a phallus. So,
Deborah Sampson, we salute you.
yeah.
You were more of a man than some of us will ever be. I honestly don't think I could dig a bullet out of my own leg.
I'd venture to say she was more of a man than 97% of our population because only 3% ever served to begin with.
Shit, I bet she swallowed the dip spit. I bet she didn't even spit it out.
Yeah, while smoking at the same time.
Right. She just gutted it, all of it. She didn't care.
Took it like a champ.
Noor Inayat Khan, a descendant of Indian royalty. Noor Inayat Khan fought for the British in World War II, not necessarily as a proponent for the country, but as an opponent of fascism. Khan joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force in 1940 and was a wireless radio operator and a special operations executive. She was the lone radio operator for 4 months in Paris until she was betrayed by a double agent. Khan withstood unimaginable torture, solitary confinement, and was executed at a concentration camp in 1944.
Damn. That's crazy too. Being a member of Indian royalty, you think the Germans would try to, leverage that a little bit, but no.
She wasn't white. They didn't care who she was.
Oh yeah, they executed white people too. So
I'm just saying.
Well, hats off to the brass balls of this woman who had bigger balls to serve than a lot of men did.
Yeah,
And
she
it's
volunteered.
unfortunate that's
Well,
what
that
I'm
was-
saying.
Oh, and that was the reason. That was another reason too, because obviously India was still. I don't know what you would call it at that point. I don't think colony is the term, but it was a British possession regardless.
Commonwealth,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Commonwealth.
a
part of the
British Commonwealth.
So I mean, her serving, just like all those other people from the Commonwealth who served, showed their valor and their use. That they weren't just mere colonial subjects, but they were regular human beings who had will. So good for her for being the pride of India. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, despite her tragic and unfortunate end.
So Paris seems like such a strange place to have her operate, though. 'Cause it's
Well,
like,
it was enemy occupied at the
well,
time.
and she just sticks out like a sore fucking thumb. No offense.
True.
Like there were plenty of places in the Middle East probably where she could have been, even in India. It's not like the Indian subcontinent was completely secured.
Maybe in areas of northern Africa too.
That's what I mean. Like where she could have blended in a little bit. Paris, she's just sticking out, and the Germans were already eyeballing non-whites. So
Yeah.
that was stupid on the British part, unless she volunteered for it.
So, Frank Luke, World War I. Frank Luke epitomized the reckless image of a fighter pilot by going after heavily defended German observation balloons. In 30 hours of flight time, over 10 missions, and 9 short days of combat, he shot down a remarkable 14 enemy balloons and 4 aircraft. He flew his final mission on September 29th, 1918, but was tragically shot while in the air. Luke managed to land his plane near Mouvaux, France, but perished from his wounds. He posthumously received the Medal of Honor for his bravery.
Damn.
World War One. I mean, a lot of people, everybody talks World War Two, but World War One was brutal.
Well, the thing about World War One for me, I find World War One fascinating because it's like this weird confluence, this clash of the ancient and the modern. Because like there's this great photo showing French cavalrymen, they're in a column with their blades, on their shoulders ceremoniously, while a French biplane or whatever, a plane is over their head. And it's just this, because you even look at the British, the Brodie helmets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Used in World War One and partly in World War Two. Actually, it was used in World War Two. And it kind of reminds me of the kettle helmets. Like if you think of Braveheart,
Mhm.
how
Yep.
it was this insane clash of like empires and new democracies and kings and president. Like there's something mystical about it that
Well, like World War One is one. It's one war I don't really know a lot of history about, but what I do know, well, it was the first major conflict where we used belt-fed machine guns, armor, and aircraft. Correct? Other than blimps, I'm talking winged aircraft.
first war for that.
It
Yeah.
was the first, strictly speaking, modern war, but was fought with a huge amount of ancient tactics. So you had machine guns and tanks and aircraft and artillery and everything, and they were still doing mass soldiers abreast charging down the machine guns, and it was insanity.
Well, and that's the thing. Like you would think, like in 1914, after a few pitched battles, that they're like, okay, this doesn't work anymore. We can toss out Napoleonic tactics now. But no, because the Somme, which many people know about, on the first day of the Battle of the Somme, I think it was either July or September 1916. I think July. The British Army lost 60,000 freaking men because
Yeah.
they sent them on these bloody, insane suicide charges. I mean, they actually did have some breakthroughs against the German line, but it was the bloodiest day in the British Army's history, single day in the British Army's history.
Yeah, it's insanity.
How many we'd lose it? How many did we lose at Antietam in the day?
Between the Confederate and the Federals, it was like 20 to 22,000.
Yeah, so that doesn't even come close.
No, it's a fraction of what the British freaking army and see there again. The Brits. Well, when I say we, I mean the Allies. America wasn't engaged in the war yet. They bombarded heavily the German positions, but just like the Confederates at Gettysburg, they like overshot the fucking defensive lines. So they barely damaged any German defense, like trenches, machine gun nests, anything.
Well, they had no guidance though. They were dropping like mortar rounds out of the aircraft when they're flying over.
Well, yeah, they're dropping the mortar rounds from the what do you call them, like the Fokkers? Or, no, that was a German plane. I can't think of the British Aero
Fires.
Squadron.
Like
Something, yeah,
something.
but yeah, and then
And they're fighting over trench lines. I mean, the charging force is totally exposed, while the defending force is deep in a trench and don't have to expose anything basically but their head and their rifle, and it's just a slaughter, and it goes back and forth one way and the other. Now the charge goes at the enemy trench, they're driven back to their trenches. Now the enemy charges, they're mowed down and driven back, and so on.
And the Germans, man, like honestly, I marvel that they didn't win, because the Germans were always maybe it's just that they overplayed their hand in both wars. And it's actually, to me, it's actually kind of a shame they didn't win the first one, because then there would have been no fucking Adolf Hitler. But you know, like the Germans were sending stormtroopers out into no man's land, like they're basically their special ops. The Brits,
Well, hopefully, I wish the guy that shot Hitler in World War I would have been a better aim.
well, Hitler, I think, got partially blinded, if I'm not mistaken, by a mustard gas attack. But
Didn't he get shot like in the ass or the leg or something?
no, because I know he won the Iron Cross, which is their Medal of Honor.
But he was basically just a messenger boy, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he got awarded, and he was just a lowly corporal. Yeah. But yeah, so when you talk about the scale, I mean, because this is why, if you look at Europe, the ceremonies for remembering their fallen are still well attended by major leaders and portions of the population. But like at Verdun, for example, the French and Germans lost a combined 1 million men over like 4 or 5 months of constant combat over the city and the forts. I mean, and even America, we entered the war officially in April 1917. I think troops started arriving in France or France around July 1917. And I think our first real engagements were August or September. So realistically, we were actually only had combat with the Germans and the Axis for like maybe a year. And in that year or less, we lost over 100,000 men.
Right.
mean,
I think the American casualties in that war were somewhere in the neighborhood of 127,000 killed.
And that's only from barely a year of combat. Like, imagine if it had dragged the fuck on. Like, it's sickening. And because you had like Belleau Wood, which is still heralded in the Marine Corps. You know,
But you got to remember though too, the battlefield medicine back then wasn't very good. Like, wounds that soldiers survive today, they would have died back then with the same wounds. You know what I mean?
that's true. But I mean, no, on just the mindset and the tactics. Because I remember reading years ago that because there was a period of time in Europe where Europeans basically agreed, hey, we're not going to fight each other anymore. We're going to focus on colonies. We're not going to get involved in any wars. So there was no war on the continent for like the first time in several millennia. So that what ended up happening was they ended up fighting tribesmen in like Africa who are no match, to European powers. So Europe got in this groove where they were just fighting technologically inferior people. And so when they went to fight each other, they're like, oh shit, these aren't tribesmen, Ubuntu tribesmen or whatever, Zulus. These are Germans.
I was about to say, when the British playing with the Zulus.
So, I mean, they got so numbskulled from, like 40 years of fighting tribesmen that when they went to fight each other, that's why the slaughter was so particularly horrifying, because they just weren't, they didn't update their tactics in time.
No, here we get another female disguised as a man. Jenny Hodges / Albert Cashier. Born in Ireland 1843, Jenny Hodges sailed to the United States and started a new life as Albert Cashier. Cashier went on to fight in the American Civil War, serving the Union Army in the 95th Illinois Infantry. There, Cashier was seen as one of the boys and fought in 40 engagements over 3 years.
Wild. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories. There's actually a pretty good story about a Cuban woman named Loretta Vasquez who fought for the Confederacy, disguising herself as a man after her husband, who was a physician, died. So she was kind of grieved and fought for Texas or Louisiana. So yeah, a few of them ended up sneaking around and not getting caught. So
another one, Kathy Williams, or Cathay, changed to William Cathay.
Bitch.
Right? Cathay Williams was the first African American woman. So she was the first
creative.
She was the first African American woman to enlist in the U.S. Army in 1866 after the Civil War. She enlisted in the 39th U.S. Infantry Company A, an all-black regiment that became known as the Buffalo Soldiers, under the name William Cathay.
'Cause she wasn't a black woman enlisting then. That's what I hate about some of these sites. They do that, but don't tell the accurate story.
So she
So-
served only 2 years of her 3-year tour before being hospitalized, discovered, and promptly sent home. After her dismissal, her health declined further. Denied military disability payments, William died sometime around 1893.
Mm.
Well, she tried.
Yeah.
George Henry Thomas.
The Rock of
Apparently,
Chickamauga.
the military and the government can lie to you, but they don't like it when you lie to them.
Yeah, remember, don't lie. The government, or don't cheat. The government hates competition. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So, despite many Union victories in the Civil War, General George Henry Thomas is not as widely recognized as fellow historic generals like Grant and Sherman. Thomas's Southern heritage kept him from getting the recognition he deserved in life.
Yeah, he was from Virginia. He stayed with the federal government. So yeah, because he won a major contest at he's called the Rock of Chickamauga, which basically prevented the Union Army from being destroyed in Tennessee. So yeah, or Tennessee or Georgia. Where the hell is Chickamauga? Yeah, I think it's Tennessee. So yeah, he's one of
Yeah, I
the
think
sort
it's
of
in
the unknowns.
Tennessee.
Yeah, he's sort of one of those unknowns who deserves more credit than he gets.
Yeah. So here's this one. Henry Johnson.
Bad.
This was a bad man. So, as part of the black regiment known as the Harlem Hellfighters, Henry Johnson suffered 21 wounds and rescued a soldier while repelling an enemy raid in the Argonne Forest during World War I. Nicknamed Black Death during wartime, Johnson's discharge papers contained errors and left out his injuries, therefore denying him disability pay and his Purple Heart. He died at 32, but his military legacy lives on through his son, Herman Johnson, who served with the famous Tuskegee Airmen in World War II.
Yeah, I think Harlem Hellfighters was another one of those situations where they were surrounded in the forest, and they repelled wave upon wave of attacks. Just absolute bad sons of bitches.
Yep.
Because of course they came from the mean ass streets of Harlem. So
Yeah.
Yep.
You all deserve
bad
our...
And like I said, Argonne Forest, man, that seemed to be where those medals were being earned, honestly.
All these men all deserve our respect and remembrance. So,
Absolutely.
All fine Americans.
Yep.
I don't know who this person is. British troops, Lydia Darragh. British troops picked the wrong house in Philadelphia to commandeer for a meeting during the Revolutionary War. Homeowner Lydia Darragh overheard them plotting a surprise attack and left home the next day to alert American officers. Her act ensured that General George Washington was prepared for the British advancement.
I tell you what, man, Washington, like God and fate, one and the same, both smiled on George Washington.
Well,
that
did you hear about his supposed angelic experience in the woods? I think it was at Valley Forge.
I believe we talked about it on one of our episodes on the paranormal podcast.
They talked about it on Ancient Aliens, but I don't think it was an alien. I think either God himself or an angel came down or something.
Well, look,
he had some kind of a vision.
Well, look, I mean, this is a guy because it's kind of funny actually because George Washington started the war that would ultimately lead to the United States of America and him becoming the first president. Because he got into an engagement with because he was like a colonel or a major of colonial troops in Virginia, so a frontier officer. Even though he was a gentleman, he was a warrior, and so he ended up killing a French officer in an engagement, which basically set off a firestorm that led to the 7 Years' War, thus to the discontentment of the American colonies, which led to the Revolution. But it's fun because there was something called Braddock's Retreat, where this British General Braddock was ambushed and killed in this by French and their Indian allies. And see, the British just did not know how to fight on the frontier. Now, Washington and the Virginians, being used to colonial tactics, I mean, Indian tactics, knew to spread out in the woods, not stay in a fucking column, you know, when you're deep in the forest. So while Braddock and most of his men got killed or captured, Washington made it safely. And the thing about Washington is his, like, he had several horses killed under him at this one battle in the French and Indian War. His, like, frock coat was fucking pierced by several bullets, but it missed him. So that guy was protected.
Yeah.
I wonder with the woman we were just talking about, the what's her name, Lydia
Dara. Yeah.
I wonder, because I mean, have you ever I mean, I'm sure you know, Ben, you're pretty well versed in history, but Washington had a vast spy network through the colonies.
Yeah, the Culper spy ring. Yeah.
And I'm very curious if this woman was somehow either affiliated with or an actual part of that network.
That one surprised me. I mean,
Possibility.
Yeah, that one surprised me because, yeah, I mean, if anybody saw Washington's Turn about the Culper spy ring, which is friggin' fantastic. Obviously, some historical issues, but nonetheless amazing. But yeah, that Washington was protected by divine providence. That there's no.
So, moving right along. This man fought like a warrior poet. He fought like a Scotsman. Mad Jack Churchill, World War II hero. Jack Churchill. He didn't use a rifle or drive a tank. Instead, this British Army officer wielded a Scottish broadsword and sometimes a longbow. As a commando, Churchill gained notoriety for charging into battle playing bagpipes and throwing hand grenades.
At the same time.
Yep. Even after a stint at the Sachsenhausen. So Sachsenhaus, I guess.
Yeah.
Concentration camp from which he escaped. He continued his military escapades, walking 93 miles to join the army in Italy.
Yeah, actually, I think there was if I'm not mistaken, there was a pretty good video about this guy on the British retreat to, basically the race to the coast to get away from, and he killed the he ambushed a small German squad and killed like 2 of them with his sword.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's huge brass balls bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Well, there's a story I heard about a huge Marine in Korea charging a Chinese defensive line with a friggin' double-edged battle axe.
Shit.
I mean, it wasn't unheard of, for Japanese soldiers and their bonsai attacks to, come charging with, samurai swords and bayonets.
Imagine friggin' charging with a friggin' claymore like on Braveheart.
Yeah.
Friggin' 6 foot long friggin' sword. Weighs more than a sledgehammer.
Right, and they say Scottish broadsword, but some of the stories I've read about Mad Jack actually name the sword he carried as a claymore, the same type of sword as he had in Braveheart.
Crazy son of a bitch.
All right, we'll move right along. Matthew Urban. During his tour in World War II, Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Urban earned 7 Purple Hearts. 7. He was critically injured time and time again, but always wanted to stay on the battlefield with his men. Urban once even left an English hospital without permission, hitchhiked back to France, and rejoined his regiment to finish a fight. Cementing his name of the Ghost, he repeatedly took shrapnel and bullets, even getting shot in the neck, but survived and came out the other side as an American hero.
So obviously it sucked for him in later years to go through the airport.
Oh yeah, I definitely say in later years he had a little arthritis going on at least.
Check out this guy's name, Richard Bong.
Dick Bong.
Right. So he
Taking
was
huge bong rips.
Dick Bong.
Bong. Dick.
Called the Ace of Aces, Major Richard Dick Bong took down a record 40 aircraft in his career as a World War II pilot and earned the Medal of Honor. Once he even shot a crocodile from the air when he noticed it following his soldiers. Bong was chosen to test a P-80, the Army Air Force's first jet, on August 6, 1945. But the test went terribly wrong and Bong lost his life. Because he died on the same day as the bombing of Hiroshima, Bong's death received little notice at the time.
Ah, man, I hate when it's stuff like that.
So he's possibly got the highest kill rate of any airman ever, and he dies in a test flight.
Yeah. Any
It's
pilot of any Air Force.
Exactly.
Is there any single pilot anywhere else that is down that many aircraft in a conflict? I can't think of one.
Because even I think the Red Baron had like 18 kills in the First World War.
Yeah, but this guy's got
Yeah.
50.
No, that's what I mean. So like the Red Baron was like the great pilot,
Yeah.
you know. And then America had Eddie Rickenbacker, who was our ace during the time. But no, I don't think anyone even comes close.
Yeah, so I mean, what is it? It's five kills to get ace. So yeah.
That's such horseshit though, dying in an accident. Like I hate that shit. That makes me sad.
Yeah, take your Medal of Honor recipient, ace fighter pilot, and oh hey, go and test this new experimental aircraft we have. Like, okay.
No, it's like retire the son of a bitch. Let him live his life.
So you kill a bona fide war hero testing an experimental aircraft.
Get some, like some hotshot pilot who just graduated like the academy in 1945, a little too late to really make a difference. Get him to test that shit.
Right?
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, though, you have to volunteer for that kind of shit. I highly doubt they made him do it. He probably wanted to.
I agree. No, I agree because he probably would have been in Korea and maybe even Nam. Who knows?
Maybe. So, Ruby Bradley, a World War II surgical nurse. Ruby Bradley was captured 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor and sent to a POW camp in Manila. There, she became an angel in fatigues, performing over 230 surgeries and assisting in childbirths under the camp's inadequate conditions, all while smuggling in food and medical supplies. 5 years later, Bradley went to the front lines of the Korean War as the chief nurse of the 171st Evacuation Hospital. As 100,000 Chinese soldiers advanced on her hospital, Bradley refused to leave until she'd evacuated all the injured and sick. Bradley managed to leap aboard her plane just as an enemy shell struck and destroyed her ambulance. So,
I wonder if her and her unit is the unit that inspired like the TV show MASH.
That's an interesting thought, man. I didn't
Curious.
think about that. That's right, because MASH is a Korean war show.
Yeah, and it follows a field hospital.
That's actually really interesting. I'll have to look that up later.
Yeah. Oh, there's that
interesting side note. Did you know that the where they filmed MASH, the set where they filmed it is still there, and there's a hiking trail you can hike out to the set of MASH?
Where is it at?
I can't remember right now. I saw it the other day, but I don't remember where it was. It might be somewhere in California, but I don't remember.
Probably.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if it's in the LA area.
So
that'd be pretty bitching to check that out, actually.
Hiru Onoda. For 29 years after World War II ended, the dedicated Japanese soldier refused to believe that the conflict was over. Instead, he hid out in the jungle of the Philippines and continued waging a war. Onoda refused to believe that the war had truly ended until his former superior officer flew to where he was camped out. The officer confirmed the news and relieved Onoda from duty. He was eventually pardoned for the crimes he committed while he believed the war was still at, or the world was still at,
Yeah,
and never gave up. Almost 30 years.
Oh yeah, no, for those 20 something years, it wasn't just him. There were
no.
two. There were a band of Japanese. He was just the only one left. You know, when they finally caught up to him and said, "Hey, you know, the war's over, right?" Because all his comrades had been picked off here and there as they were carrying out guerrilla raids here and there. You know, and eventually he was it. And yeah,
All right, well, here we go. Eugene Bullard. Eugene Bullard was the first African American fighter pilot, but he flew for France because the U.S. didn't accept his service during World War I. Flying instead for the French, Bullard fearlessly embarked on 25 to 27 missions in a plane painted with the motto "Tout sang que." God, I can't speak French, but
ask Ben. Ben can
all
speak
blood,
to what I said.
all blood runs red. He later also served as an Allied spy in Paris during World War II.
Cool et rouge. Yeah. All right. That's a bitchin' motto right there. Damn.
Oh, that's it. He's the last one on our list for this page.
Yeah.
Then
Maybe
got
for a
some
oh,
more stories.
you have one.
Where was I at? 13 incredible stories of American servicemen who were awarded the Medal of Honor. 1863. So since it was first given in 1863, the medal has been awarded only 3,517 times, 19 of which were double awards.
Yeah.
Today, the medal is given to any soldier who has distinguished themselves conspicuously by gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while engaged in an action against enemies of the United States.
Is playing Call of Duty count?
Yeah, I guess it does these days, huh?
Some of these COD players would argue that.
Jacob Parrott, Civil War. Private Jacob Parrott was the first person ever to be awarded the Medal of Honor. Parrott, along with 6 other Union soldiers, we awarded for their actions during the Great Locomotive Chase, also known as Andrews Raid, during the Civil War. The raid saw 22 Union volunteers sneak behind enemy lines to Atlanta, steal a train, and ride up north to Chattanooga. Along the way, they cut telegraph lines, destroyed railroad tracks, and attempted to burn bridges. The objective was to cut off Confederate-held Chattanooga from reinforcements as the Union Army would attack the city. The raid ended in failure. Some of the raiders were captured and executed. Most of the damage was repaired quickly, and the Union Army postponed their attack on Chattanooga. Despite the failure, the raiders who survived were hailed as heroes.
Yeah, I think there's even a film that was made on that. That was a pretty wild event.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I heard of it before I read this. William Harvey Carney, Civil War, the 54th Mass.
Glory.
Yep. So William Harvey Carney was the first African American awarded the Medal of Honor. He was born a slave in Virginia, but eventually made his way to freedom in Massachusetts. When the Union Army began accepting volunteers, he joined the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, the first African American unit organized by the northern states, though it was led by white officers. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, led by Robert Gould Shaw, was tasked with taking Fort Wagner, a beachhead fortification that guarded the southern approach to Charleston Harbor. A previous attack on the fort failed, and the 54th Massachusetts was chosen for the next attempt. As the soldiers stormed the fort's walls, the Union flag bearer was killed. Carney grabbed the flag and held it for the duration of the battle. Carney, along with the rest of the 54th, was forced to retreat throughout Throughout the battle, Kearny never lost possession of the flag, despite suffering multiple injuries. He said, "Boys, I only did my duty. The old flag never touched the ground," he said after the battle. Kearny was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1900. Yeah. So it took them like 30 something years to finally give him the Medal of Honor.
I mean, they're still alive for it, right? So
Fort Wagner was in what, 1864?
63, but I think there were 2 attacks
63.
before.
So,
Actually, yeah, because I think the
37
54th
years.
Massachusetts.
so yeah, it took them 37 years to recognize him. But
Mary Edwards Walker. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker is the first and only female recipient of the Medal of Honor in U.S. history. She was an abolitionist and medical doctor who tried to join the Union Army as a surgeon, but was unable to because she was a woman. She declined to work as a nurse and instead accepted an unpaid volunteer position at military hospitals on the front line. In 1863, she was finally allowed to work as a contract acting assistant surgeon and wore a modified uniform of her own design that looked like a man's. During her service, she devoted herself with much patriotic zeal to the sick and wounded, both in the field and hospitals. She was captured by the Confederates but released in a prisoner exchange. Major Generals William T. Sherman and George H. Thomas both commended her for her service, and President Andrew Johnson awarded her the Medal of Honor in 1865. Her award was temporarily rescinded in 1917 after it was determined that it was unwarranted because her status as a civilian. She refused to give her medal back and wore it every day until her death in 1919. President Jimmy Carter reinstated Walker's medal in 1977.
One of the few good things he did. So good for him.
probably the only good thing he did.
Thomas Custer.
Oh, George Armstrong's brother, one of his brothers, right?
Captain Thomas W. Custer.
They were all killed at Little Bighorn.
He was
All
the
of them.
first soldier to receive 2 medals of honor, both for actions in the Civil War. His first medal was given to him for his actions at the Battle of Namazine Church. He led a cavalry charge over a barricade under fire, seized a Confederate flag, and took 3 officers and 11 soldiers prisoner. 3 days later, at the Battle of Sailor's Creek, Custer again seized a Confederate flag during a cavalry charge, but in a much more dramatic fashion. After leaping over a barricade, Custer single-handedly broke a Confederate line. In the confusion, he found the Confederate flag bearer and charged at him. The Confederate promptly shot Custer in the face, causing him to, I'm assuming that means fall back on his horse. Yeah. Custer regained his composure, killed the flag bearer, and then presented the captured flag to his brother, Brigadier General George Armstrong Custer.
How dare you shoot me in the face, sir?
He was ordered by his brother to report to the surgeon and was placed under arrest when he ignored the order. Thomas Custer would later die at the Battle of Little Bighorn along with his 2 brothers in 1876.
Isn't that wild? All of them killed.
Yep.
I think that's the thing about the Custer. Like, I remember checking them out. I think none of the Custer brothers had kids, so I think that line ended.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hubert,
killed for his brother's ego and vanity, basically.
Yep. Hubris and ego was what caused the death of that family line.
That's true. Wild.
So here we go. Theodore Roosevelt, Spanish-American War. So Theodore Roosevelt is the only president to have received the Medal of Honor, though he did so for actions prior to his term. He wasn't actually awarded the medal until 2001. So then a colonel in the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry, Roosevelt received his medal for his actions at the Battle of San Juan Hill. The charge on the hill had been stalled, and the commanding officer of the battle had ordered the soldiers to hold their position. Upset at the lack of progress, Roosevelt managed to convince his superiors to send his unit, known as the Rough Riders, to assist the infantry in their assault. technically against orders and in total disregard for his personal safety and accompanied by only 4 or 5 men. He led his unit in a charge up the hill. Roosevelt was the first American who made it to the Spanish trenches. The charge inspired other soldiers to follow, and the tide of the battle turned. Roosevelt was nominated for the Medal of Honor during the war, but officials in the army, upset over his disobedience and his new fame, blocked it. His nomination was finally confirmed in 2001 by President Bill Clinton.
So they were just pissed off that
They were just mad because he didn't listen.
And he got all the accolades, the praise for winning the battle, not them.
Damn Colonel Tavington, damn that man. We will not allow him to take the glory from this field. Send the entire battalion over the hill and crush them. It ends today.
That didn't work out so well for him.
Nope. Damn Tavington, damn that man. So, all right. Daniel Daly, Boxer Rebellion, and the Banana Wars.
The Banana Hammock Wars.
Sergeant Major Daniel Joseph Daly. U.S. Marine.
I think it's probably Daly, but
it's D-A-L-Y.
Yeah, it's spelled Daly, but I bet he pronounced it Daly. How much you want to bet?
Why don't we ask him?
Don't dally here, Sergeant Major Daly. All right, so Daniel Daly is one of only 2 Marines who received 2 Medals of Honor in 2 different conflicts. His first medal was awarded for his actions at the Battle of Peking. Yeah, Peking. Now called Beijing, during the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. After a pitched battle, then Private Daly's unit managed to take the Tater Wall. The Tater Wall?
Tatar.
Tater. I'm going to say it's the Tater. The Tater Wall.
I think it's Tatar, Andy.
Yeah, Tatar. They're, yeah.
The Tater Wall. So it was a wall made of taters, spuds.
God, you're retarded.
It was reinforced potatoes. Yeah.
All right,
Not
so
his fault. You can't read.
Are you sick? Do you have no soul? Are you making fun of a 6-year-old for trying to read?
Today, Junior.
Right. So, all right. His unit then left to get reinforcements and supplies to reinforce the wall, leaving Daly alone to guard it. The Boxers counterattacked later that night, and Daly single-handedly held them off, killing or wounding about 200 of them.
That sounds made up. Like he lied about that shit.
Well, I mean, the bodies would be self-evidence when they came back the next morning.
I guess so, but they just sucked at fighting then, I guess.
So,
well, I mean, it is the Chinese.
That's true. They just send mass waves of people into danger.
So the Daly's second Medal of Honor was awarded for his actions at the Battle of Fort Dippity during the occupation of Haiti, Haiti as part of the Banana Wars. In that engagement, Daly, now a gunnery sergeant, led a unit of some 35 Marines against an attack of 400 Cacos rebels. Not a single Marine died under his command during the battle. Daly is also famous for reportedly yelling at his troops, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?"
Oh, so he's the one who came up with that.
Before charging German trenches during the Battle of Belleau Wood in World War I. He was recommended for a 3rd Medal of Honor after that battle, but was given the Navy Cross instead.
We can't give an enlisted man 3 Medals of Honor.
He'd be the most highest
Two is
ranking
more
man
than
in the
enough
world.
for any man.
I mean, he's gonna murder ass for the rest of his life with 2. What does he need a 3rd one for?
Well, we brought Audie Murphy back up again in this one.
We already read Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, but this might be a different story.
No, it's the same one.
Oh, yeah, it is the same story. Damn it. All right, William D. Hawkins, World War II. William D. Hawkins was a U.S. Marine who was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions at the Battle of Tarawa in 1943. Hawkins, his platoon of 40 men, and other Marines were pinned down by a number of pyramid-shaped steel machine gun nests that were firing heavy machine gun rounds into them as they advanced on Betio Island. Already wounded by shrapnel during his landing, Hawkins single-handedly took out 6 of the nests by crawling up to them and shooting the Japanese soldiers inside point blank. When he ran out of ammunition, he threw grenades and satchel charges in them. After destroying a 7th nest, he was wounded in the chest. A medic patched him up, and his superior told him to get on a first aid boat and leave. He responded by yelling, "I'm not doing it, sir. I came here to kill Japs, not go home." Hawkins was finally shot and killed while throwing a grenade into an 8th machine gun nest by a Japanese soldier. Robert Sherrod, a Time correspondent who was at Tarawa, wrote that to say that his conduct was worthy of the highest traditions of the Marine Corps is like saying the Empire State Building is moderately high. He recorded his last words were, "Boys, I sure hate to leave you like this."
That's another set of brass balls.
Well, the Marines of World War II seem to have them in abundance.
Could hear them clanging together every step.
Yep. Imagine the noise of like thousands of them as they get off the boats on Iwo Jima or whatever.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, could hear the landing craft coming a mile away because the balls clanging together.
just cowbells, just dum, 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 dum. So Daniel Inouye, World War II. I can't say his name. Daniel Inouye was one of only 7 U.S. senators to receive the Medal of Honor. He was awarded the medal for his actions during a battle in the vicinity of San Terenzo, Italy. As a Japanese American, Inouye was sent to the European theater as part of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, a segregated unit made up mostly of second-generation Japanese Americans. Japanese Americans were not allowed to fight in the Pacific. Inouye and his unit were tasked with attacking a part of the Gothic Line, a German defense line in Europe. As they attacked, German machine gunners opened fire, pinning them down. Inouye was shot in the stomach as he attempted to advance, but ignored his wounds even after being told of the severity of them. He destroyed 2 machine gun nests with grenades before collapsing from blood loss. Inouye's men distracted the 3rd and final machine gun nest while he crawled toward it. As he was about to throw a grenade into it, a German grenade blew up, almost completely separating his right arm from his body. Inouye's grenade was clenched in a fist that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. He pried it out with his left hand, threw it into the nest, and shot at the remaining Germans with his Thompson submachine gun one-handed. Inouye was originally awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, but it was upgraded to the Medal of Honor by President Bill Clinton in the year 2000. This is the guy you were talking about earlier, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Roy.
Yeah, you want to talk about brass balls.
Yeah, this guy's a hard ass, dude.
Yeah, Roy Benavides.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This guy was the epitome of brass balls in Vietnam.
Army Green Beret, Master Sergeant, who was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions in a firefight that has been called 6 Hours in Hell. In April of 1968, an American unit was on patrol west of Loc Ninh, near the South Vietnamese-Cambodian border, when they ran into a 1,000-man NVA infantry battalion. Benavides voluntarily boarded a helicopter to reinforce the unit and was dropped into the fight for his life. Benavides ran to the pinned down unit after being dropped off. On the way, he was wounded in his right leg, face, and head. He took control of the soldiers, dragged half of the wounded to the medevac helicopter, and then ran alongside the helicopter as it moved to pick up more wounded. As Benavides went back to secure classified documents from the body of a dead soldier, the helicopter's pilot was mortally wounded, and the aircraft crashed. Benavides secured the documents, went back to the helicopter, and aided the wounded out of the overturned aircraft. He guided the men to a defensive position and called in airstrikes. When another helicopter came, he ferried the wounded, killed one NVA soldier in hand-to-hand combat, and killed 2 others that were charging the helicopter from behind it. After making sure all the wounded were on board, Benavides collapsed, but was pulled onto the helicopter, thinking he was dead. A doctor put him in a body bag and only stopped zipping it up when Benavides spat in his face. Benavides sustained 7 major gunshot wounds, had shrapnel in his head, scalp, shoulder, buttocks, feet, and legs, had both his arms slashed by a bayonet, and had a collapsed lung. He was originally awarded the Distinguished Service Cross because his superiors thought he would die and wanted him to be awarded before his death. In 1981, his award was upgraded to the Medal of Honor.
Nice.
Now, keep in mind, Ben, this man was wounded almost immediately after he was dropped off the helicopter to assist. So
3 times.
3 times in his head.
As soon as he hit the LZ.
Literally, yeah. And he went through this entire 6-hour ordeal, wounded the entire time.
You know,
Yeah,
like
where he picked up an additional 4 wounds or 5 wounds or however many he picked up, a lot. I mean, he was a walking pincushion at the end of it.
No, and like I hear stories from Army vets of a certain age or a certain period of service, and most of them attended, he spoke to their command, or they attended one of his talks. I mean, he is well regarded still, from my understanding, at least among certain generations in the Army veterans. Not just Vietnam, but maybe even up to Persian Gulf and a little bit later, because he would always speak to them.
Well, he's definitely earned his spot in Valhalla when it's his time, or if it hasn't been his time already. Is he dead?
Yeah, I think
he died recently, actually.
2000, sometime in the
mid
2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, I shouldn't say recently. He died fairly recently, not that long ago. I don't believe.
Everybody from the Army should know these two.
Yep, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon from Maine, Lincoln, Maine Zone.
Yep. If you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down, then you should know about these two as well.
Of course, not to ignore Mr. Well, what was Sugar? I can't see all of the screen.
What's up?
Was he a Master Sergeant as well?
No, they're both.
They're E7s.
They're both wearing Sergeant First Class stripes, but
maybe Master Sergeant was posthumous. Then I don't know. I've always heard him as Master Sergeant Gary Gordon.
It probably
Gary
was.
Gordon. It might have been, because it does say Master Sergeant Gary Gordon, but that picture is a Sergeant First Class.
Every Mainer should know him. It should be required literature to at least see this picture and know his story.
So if you're from Maine, pay attention.
Yep.
Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart and Master Sergeant Gary Gordon were 2 Delta Force snipers who were posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions in the Battle of Mogadishu in 1993. Shugart and Gordon were part of Task Force Ranger, a multi-branch special forces team tasked with capturing Somali warlord Mohammed Farah
ID'd.
He
ID.
during the
ID.
Somali Civil War. So, during an operation to capture Aidid's top lieutenants, 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down by Somali militiamen. One of the Black Hawks, codenamed Super 64, was shot down while U.S. forces were trying to secure the first crash site. Shugart and Gordon, who had been providing overwatch from a different Black Hawk, requested 3 times to be inserted to the crash site when they learned that there were no immediate forces in the area. Their request was finally granted, and they established a perimeter with wounded pilot Michael Durant,
Yeah, Mike Durant. Yeah.
who was the only person to survive the crash. Shugart, Gordon, and Durant were attacked by a mob of militants. They held off the mob and killed an undetermined number of attackers before they ran out of ammunition and were overrun. Shugart and Gordon fought until the moment they both died. Durant was taken prisoner by the militia, but they had saved him from uncertain death, or from certain death.
You know, I can't remember if it was Shugart and Gordon, if it was their bodies that were dragged through the streets of Mogadishu.
It was.
Yeah. Fucking insult to injury. But yeah, Mike Durant, I mean, he was reclaimed. He was brought back to America, and he actually just recently ran in for Senate in Alabama or something. So he's still kicking.
Yeah. Jason Dunham, Iraq. So, Jason Dunham was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for sacrificing himself to save his fellow Marines during the Iraq War. Dunham's unit was conducting a patrol in Husayba, Iraq, when a firefight erupted nearby. His unit was ordered to intercept cars in the area that had been spotted at the attack. As Dunham approached a vehicle to search it, an insurgent jumped out and engaged him in hand-to-hand combat. After wrestling the insurgent to the ground, Dunham noticed that he had pulled the pin of a grenade and dropped it. Dunham immediately and without hesitation covered the grenade with his helmet and body, bearing the brunt of the explosion and shielding his Marines from the blast. Dunham was mortally wounded, but saved the lives of 2 Marines. He was evacuated to the National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda,
Yeah, Bethesda,
Maryland, in a coma.
My God, he can't read.
I don't know these fucking weird ass fucking names of towns and shit. After it was determined he would not recover, he was taken off life support and died 8 days later.
Bethesda's like the Walter Reed for the Navy.
Well, Bethesda can blow my pathetic little dick. Just kidding.
You got pathetic and little right.
So, all right. Dakota Meyer, Afghanistan. Dakota Meyer is a U.S. Marine who was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions at the Battle of... See, here's another one. Ganjgal on September 8th, 2009 in Kunar Province, Afghanistan. Meyer's unit, along with some Afghan National Army soldiers, set out to engage Taliban forces and to protect anti-Taliban village elders in Ganjgal. The Marines were told that they would not have immediate close air support, but that there was artillery support in the area. As soon as they arrived, the task force was ambushed on 3 sides by over 100 Taliban militants. More than were originally estimated by intelligence reports. Calls for artillery support were denied for fear of civilian casualties, and nearby helicopters were taking fire at a different location. Upon learning that 4 of his team members were cut off, Meyer and another Marine commandeered an A&A truck and, under intense enemy fire, drove to their location. Meyer would end up making 5 trips to and from the battle site, manning the machine gun. He killed a number of militants, some at almost point blank range, disrupting the Taliban attack and taking pressure off of friendly forces. During the trips, he and his driver evacuated 24 ANA soldiers, many of which were wounded, and provided cover for other U.S. Marines and ANA troops pinned by the Taliban. Meyer eventually dismounted his vehicle and, on foot, went to an area the cut-off servicemen were expected to be. He found their bodies and prevented their capture by beating a Taliban insurgent to death with a rock. He was awarded the Medal of Honor 2 years later on September 15th, 2011. I actually heard, I think it was this guy. I heard an interview where he told the whole story of what happened that day on, I think it's the Mike Drop podcast with Mike Ritlin.
Right.
Navy SEAL.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard that too.
Yeah, he told like the whole story on there. But this guy's hardcore, dude.
Yeah, and he was one time potential son-in-law for Sarah Palin, which should get him a second Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
yeah, I don't know if we want to, maybe touch on some people we want to remember today. What your thoughts are on that? If we want to do some honorable mentions.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. So one I'd like to, I guess the one I'd like to drop is Tillman Browning. Yeah, Tillman Browning. He was a neighbor of my late grandmother's in West Virginia, and I learned about him kind of in the last year or two of my grandmother's life. And I'm glad she told me about him because he was 16 when he joined the Navy. He lied about his age, so he actually was on the Arizona at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, at 16 years of age, when obviously the Japanese bombed the and sunk the Arizona. So I always try to remember him every year because I don't, from my own research, I don't think he has much collateral family alive. Definitely not any immediate family. I don't know if there's any nieces and nephews. So I feel like I'm the only person who remembers Seaman First Class Browning every year, and I kind of make it a point of honor now. So yeah, 16 years old, Pearl Harbor.
How about you, Ronnie? What do you got? Ronnie.
What?
Who do you want to bring up for Remembrance Memorial Day?
I'm gonna put it up on my background. There. I'm gonna remember them fine gentlemen.
The picture's too small for us to see.
Of course it is.
Well,
What?
I mean, I can't see their faces in the pictures. I can see it's a memorial.
I can see the display.
It's really blurry too because camera technology blew ass back then.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't even have the pictures available, but
I can't even see who's who here. So I think it's the two N ones that confuse me. So I don't know which one is which because I can't see. So the three middle ones is Sergeant Perales. The middle one left to right, Sergeant Perales, Sergeant White, and the third one is Major Hecker. And then there's Mariano, who's a private. And why the fuck can't I remember the last name right now? Probably because I'm drunk.
Probably.
Probably so.
Mm.
Memory eternal.
Yep. So for me, I'm gonna go Sergeant Moon, Sergeant Mike Martinez, Specialist Dustin Workman, Private Corey Hiltz.
It's gonna bug the shit out of me why I can't
Oh, there's
remember.
too many to name. Well, Smithers, he died after the war. Lost the battle to his demons. Who else was it in that one? I named off Ed Moon, Dustin Martinez. Oh, Doc, our Doc Kim, Sergeant Kim. Is another one.
Why can't I think of the name?
Yeah.
And I'm losing it.
Yeah.
There's another one too that deserves an honorable mention on my end. That's Sergeant Gordon. He isn't pictured here. He died on another mission on another day.
Oh, I got another one. What happened to him? He just died recently. Crap. Now I'm gonna feel like shit for forgetting him. I didn't talk to him for a while. Anyway, he just recently died from I believe it was cirrhosis. Drank too much. I'm never gonna find it. Damn it.
Oh my god.
Dead air. No, I'll never find it. Anyway,
Have our moment of silence.
it's too many to mention, I guess. You going outside, Ronny?
Yeah.
Anybody else, Ben?
Mm, oh yeah, Christopher Lures. He was AVH, that in the Navy, that's a rating for aviation bosun's mate handling. You know, when you look at like Top Gun, that's like your blue shirts and yellow shirts, you know, in the movies, for reference for people. So turns out he died about 5 or 6 years after I left, after I served with him on the ship. Pretty young father. I don't know what the medical issue was, if it was service related or not, but kind of a young guy from New York, a couple of young kids. So kind of had an irritating ass personality, but you know, you feel, that was
I got
probably
it now. I got to say it before I forget. Rafael Mendez. He retired. I think, not long after I did. Maybe one deployment after me. But yeah, he recently passed away. So thought I'd bring him up.
but yeah, obviously the Navy of, World War II, or the modern Navy, is very different from your Navy of yesteryear, world, especially the World Wars or the Civil War. So we don't experience, they don't experience much of the same unless you're in like a dev crew or spec op or something. You
Well,
don't
that
get
might
that.
change. That might change here shortly.
That's true. That is true. Maybe what was old is new again. So, but yeah, there are a few folks that seem to have lost some sort of battle with something in the intervening years since I've been on my my old ship. So
Yep. So what now? You want to wrap it up?
yeah, so this is going on, I believe, both podcasts.
Yeah.
So for Supernatural Beer Road, you can find it on Rumble, and basically any podcast aggregation site like Audible, for example. For Supernatural, pardon me, for Anticon Podcast, you can find us on gab.com, Getter, GETTR.com, Truth Social, and MeWe, MEWE. So those are the 4 ones that we operate on for a social media presence. And you'll find us under the same name for all 4 sites, Anticom Space Podcast. And I guess just the last thing I'll say before we close out here and play some taps is, just those who've gone before us, just say their names every now and then, because there was a great quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but talking about how there's three essential stages of death. And the first one is when you lose your life in this world. The second is when your body is consigned to the grave, no matter what manner your remains have been consigned. And the third death, which I think is actually probably one of the more tragic, is the last time, sometime in the future, when the last person utters your name, and then your name just is gone. So, for all the people who might still be listening or happen upon this, if just there's someone you're remembering today or any day, just say their name and every now and then look at their picture. It kind of keeps them alive in a sense, which is one last kindness we can do for them.
Yep. Well, that's all I got, I think. So this has been our Memorial Day special, remembering those that went before us, our fallen heroes of this nation.
And pointing out a few that stand out among the rest.
Yep.
Too many to name, unfortunately.
Yep.
There's far too many, probably thousands, whose exploits were never officially recognized or made it into record.
Yep.
And
Known.
just the few.
Let's end this and remember their sacrifice with taps.
Hats off.
My hair is terrible. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we are signing out.